Captain Tziloth Carr, Supreme Commander of the Sogroth pirate fleet, stared out the viewport of his flagship with his large, unblinking eyes. His mottled purple skin rippled as he clenched his tentacles in anticipation. After months of planning, they were finally closing in on the juiciest prize in this sector, a fat merchant vessel ripe for plunder. "Status report," Tziloth gurgled, his siphon pulsing rapidly. "We're almost in range, Captain," replied his first mate, Clorsode, a burly cephalopod with an ugly scar across his mantle. "Weapons charged and ready. The crew is hungry for loot." Tziloth allowed himself a brief surge of pride. The Sogroth were the most feared pirates in the galaxy, striking terror into the hearts of all who dare travel the space lanes. With their natural camouflage abilities and mastery of the lost art of boarding and hand-to-hand combat, no ship could withstand them once they latched on with their docking tentacles. As they drew closer to the wallowing merchant ship, Tziloth noticed something strange. The slow, bulky freighter was adrift, not even attempting evasive maneuvers, and its hull markings were like nothing he'd seen before. An uneasy tingling prickled down Tziloth's tentacles. Something wasn't right here. He barked an order to magnify the image of the ship. The name on the hull slowly came into focus, Terra's Hope, and below that, a symbol that chilled Tziloth to his core, a blue planet with a single large continent, encircled by stars. It couldn't be. Not here. "Please, Norgos, anyone but them. Humans, wait!" Clorsode shrieked, voicing the crew's dawning horror. "It's an Earthship. We need to abort now, so we are." Tziloth slammed a tentacle on the console. "No, I refuse to turn tail and run from those peculiar primates. Think of our reputation." "But Captain, you know the stories," Clorsode pleaded, his chromatophores flashing in distress. "Humans are unpredictable. They don't surrender, and they fight with unmatched determination. We can't—" "I don't want to hear any more myths and rumors," Tziloth roared. "They're just oddly resilient creatures. We'll subdue them swiftly and seize their cargo. Prepare boarding pods." As the crew scrambled to obey, Tziloth glared at the Earthship looming on the view screen, trying to ignore the cold dread squirming in his guts. He was committed now. This would be the Sogroth's greatest triumph, or their undoing. Tziloth turned to his science officer, a spindly Sogroth named Kvizar. "What do we actually know about these humans? I want facts, not hearsay." Kvizar consulted his datapad, his tentacles dancing over the controls. "Humans are a relatively young space-faring species from the Sol system. They are bipedal mammalians, known for their adaptability and tenacity. Their technology level is advanced, but not overwhelmingly so compared to galactic standards." Tziloth nodded. "So they can be overcome. What about their combat capabilities?" "Difficult to say, Captain," Kvizar admitted. "There are accounts of human ships fighting off raiders with alarming efficiency, but the details are scarce. They seem to favor kinetic weaponry and employ unorthodox tactics. But most of what we have are unsubstantiated rumors and exaggerations." Clorsode interjected nervously. "Like the story of the human captain who rammed a pirate frigate with a mining pod, or the one about the human marines who fought off a Kralaxian boarding party with nothing but hand tools and fire extinguishers." Tziloth waved a dismissive tentacle. "Tall tales, nothing more. Focus on the task at hand. We have numbers and brute strength on our side. The humans will break before our might." But even as he said the words, Tziloth couldn't shake the sense of unease coiling in his gut. The humans were an enigma, a cipher, and in his experience, the unknown was always dangerous. He shook off the feeling and fixed his eyes on the view screen. The Earthship loomed larger with every passing moment, a fat prize waiting to be claimed. Tziloth bared his fangs in a predatory grin. It was too late for second thoughts now. Glory and riches awaited. The humans would just have to learn the hard way what it meant to cross the Sogroth. As the Sogroth ship closed in on its prey, Tziloth couldn't help but reflect on the legends that surrounded the humans. They were said to be a young race, having only achieved faster-than-light travel a few centuries ago. And yet, in that short time, they had made a name for themselves as a species to be reckoned with. There were tales of human ships venturing into the most dangerous regions of space, braving hazards that would make even the stoutest Sogroth quail in fear. They had colonized worlds that most species would have deemed uninhabitable, adapting to hostile environments with a tenacity that bordered on the miraculous. And then there were the whispers of their prowess in battle. It was said that a single human ship could take on a fleet of pirates and emerge victorious, their crews fighting with a ferocity and cunning that defied belief. Some even claimed that the humans possessed secret weapons, devices of terrifying power that could lay waste to entire planets. Tzailoth scoffed at such notions. Surely these were just exaggerations, tall tales spun by those who had never actually faced a human in combat. The Sogroth were the scourge of the space lanes, the most feared pirates in the galaxy. What chance did a lone human vessel stand against their might? And yet, as the Earthship grew larger on the view screen, Tzailoth couldn't shake the feeling of unease that coiled in his gut. There was something about the way the ship just hung there, seemingly dead in space, that set his nerves on edge. It was as if the humans were inviting them to attack, confident in their ability to repel any assault. Tzailoth shook his head, dismissing such thoughts. He was the supreme commander of the Sogroth pirate fleet, the most ruthless and cunning raider in the galaxy. He would not be intimidated by mere rumors and hearsay. He turned to Klorzad, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare the boarding parties. I want shock troopers in the first wave, with heavy weapons teams to follow. We'll overwhelm them with numbers and firepower." Klorzad nodded, his chromatophores flashing with anticipation. "Aye, Captain. They won't know what hit them." As the crew rushed to carry out his orders, Tzailoth settled back in his command chair, his tentacles twitching with barely suppressed eagerness. Soon, very soon, he would have the answers he sought. He would see for himself whether the humans lived up to their fearsome reputation. And if they did, well, it would only make his victory all the sweeter. For what greater glory could there be than to defeat the most feared warriors in the galaxy? Tzailoth allowed himself a small, vicious smile. The humans had no idea what was coming for them. They would learn to their sorrow the folly of crossing the Sogroth, and the galaxy would tremble at the mere mention of his name. Sergeant Mac Maverick Hollister checked the charge on his pulse rifle and nodded in satisfaction. Around him in the armory, the rest of the Terra's Hope security team were gearing up and running final system checks on their power armor. "Listen up, people," Hollister called out. "We've got pirates inbound, and they're looking for an easy score. Time to show them what happens when you try to raid a human ship. Stick to your training, watch each other's backs, and we'll send these bastards packing." The assembled security personnel responded with a chorus of affirmatives, their faces grim but determined beneath their helmets. They were a mixed bunch drawn from various Earth military and law enforcement backgrounds, but they were all professionals, handpicked for this mission. Hollister allowed himself a small smile. The Sogroth had no idea what they were flying into. The Terra's Hope might look like a juicy target, but she had teeth. Sharp ones. He turned as the armory hatch hissed open and a wiry figure in an exosuit strode in. Hollister raised an eyebrow at the new arrival. "Cutting it a bit close, aren't you, Snyder? The party's about to start." Dr. Luke Snyder, the Terra's Hope's chief engineer and resident technical wizard, flashed a quick grin. "Just double-checking our little surprise for the pirates. Trust me, Sarge, they're going to love it." Hollister eyed the cylindrical device slung across Snyder's back. "That thing's not going to blow a hole in my ship, is it? I've seen your surprises in action before." Snyder chuckled. "Yuh, little faith. This baby's perfectly safe. For us, anyway. Let's just say the Sogroth are about to learn a painful lesson about tangling with human ingenuity." Hollister shook his head ruefully. Snyder was a certified genius, a master of jury-rigging technical miracles out of spare parts and sheer audacity. His gadgets had saved the crew's collective asses more times than Hollister could count. "Just make sure you point that thing the right way when the time comes," Hollister said dryly. Any further conversation was cut off by a deep boom that reverberated through the ship's hull. The pirates were here. Hollister felt a familiar surge of adrenaline as he slapped his helmet on and checked his rifle one last time. Beside him, Snyder was practically vibrating with anticipation, a fierce grin stretching his face. "All right, people," Hollister roared. "Move out and give 'em hell. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for Earth, for humanity. Time to show these space bastards what that means." The security team responded with a roar of their own and surged towards the exit, ready to face the invaders. Hollister and Snyder fell in behind them, moving with the smooth efficiency of long practice. As they pounded through the corridors towards the sound of distant gunfire, Hollister allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Soggroth had picked the wrong ship to mess with. They were about to learn the hard way what happened when you poked a stick at the human race. We might not be the biggest dogs in the galactic yard, he thought fiercely, but we're sure as hell the most stubborn. Time to teach these pirates a lesson they won't soon forget. As the security team raced through the ship's corridors, the sounds of battle grew louder with every step. The sharp crack of pulse rifles mingled with the sizzling hiss of plasma fire, punctuated by the occasional boom of a frag grenade. Hollister felt a surge of pride as he listened to the chatter on the commnet. His people were holding the line, giving as good as they got. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were making the Soggroth pay for every inch of ground. "Security team, status report!" He barked into his helmet mic. "Holding steady, Sarge," came the reply, the voice tight with strain, but filled with determination. "We've got them bottled up in the cargo bay, but they're pushing hard. Could use some reinforcements." As they pounded through that corridors towards the sound of distant gunfire, Hollister allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Soggroth had picked the wrong ship to mess with. They were about to learn the hard way what happened when you poked a stick at the human race. "We might not be the biggest dogs in the galactic yard," he thought fiercely, "but we're sure as hell the most stubborn. Time to teach these pirates a lesson they won't soon forget." As the security team raced through the ship's corridors, the sounds of battle grew louder with every step. The sharp crack of pulse rifles mingled with the sizzling hiss of plasma fire, punctuated by the occasional boom of a frag grenade. Hollister felt a surge of pride as he listened to the chatter on the commnet. His people were holding the line, giving as good as they got. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were making the Soggroth pay for every inch of ground. "Security team, status report!" He barked into his helmet mic. "Holding steady, Sarge," came the reply, the voice tight with strain, but filled with determination. "We've got them bottled up in the cargo bay, but they're pushing hard. Could use some reinforcements." "Fire in the hole!" Snyder yelled, his voice filled with manic glee. "Let's see how these bastards like a taste of human ingenuity." He pulled the trigger, and the device erupted in a blinding flash of light and a deafening roar of sound. A shimmering wave of force exploded outward, washing over the combatants like a tidal surge. The Soggroth pirates caught in the blast were tossed like rag dolls, their weapons shorting out in showers of sparks. They convulsed and thrashed on the deck, their motor control completely disrupted. But the humans advanced through the chaos unscathed, their armor glowing with a faint blue sheen. They moved with the smooth, practiced efficiency of a well-oiled machine, taking advantage of the Soggroth's momentary disorientation to press their attack. Hollister was at the forefront, his pulse rifle spitting death with every squeeze of the trigger. He moved like a man possessed, his every shot finding its mark with unerring accuracy. Beside him, Snyder whooped with joy as he fired off another blast from his EMP device, sending another group of Soggroth tumbling to the deck. The man was a mad genius, a technical wizard who could turn the tide of battle with a single, well-placed gadget. Together they led the charge, rallying the beleaguered security team and driving the Soggroth back with every step. It was a sight to behold, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. And as the last Soggroth pirate fell, his chest a smoking ruin, Hollister knew that they had done it. They had held the line, protected their ship and their crew. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. Xyloth surged out of the boarding pod, his disruptor pistol spitting green plasma bolts. All around him, the once pristine corridors of the Earthship were rapidly dissolving into chaos as his boarders engaged the human defenders in vicious close-quarters combat. To his dismay, the fight was not going at all as he'd envisioned. The humans, rather than folding under the Soggroth assault, were giving as good as they got. They wore advanced-powered armor that shrugged off disruptor fire, and their weapons unleashed deadly hails of hyper-accelerated metal that punched through Soggroth chitin with alarming ease. Xyloth ducked behind a bulkhead as a group of defenders raked his position with fire. This was insanity. What kind of merchant ship had a security force equipped like frontline shock troops? He risked a peek around the corner and immediately wished he hadn't. The defenders weren't just holding the line. They were advancing, pushing the boarders back with terrifying resolve. One human in particular seemed to be at the forefront, a giant of a man with a stylized bird of prey emblazoned on his armor. He wielded a massive rotary cannon with casual ease, mowing down Soggroth pirates like wheat before a thresher. "Come on, you squid-faced bastards!" the hawk-eyed warrior bellowed. "You wanted a fight? You've got one. Security team, push forward!" The humans behind him answered with a wordless roar and redoubled their efforts, forcing the Soggroth to give ground in a chaotic, bloody melee. Tzailoth felt the icy claws of fear sinking into his heart. This wasn't a merchant ship, it was a trap. A den of human warriors who fought with a skill and ferocity that defied belief. He had to rally his crew, regroup, and a strange, high-pitched whine split the air, rising even over the din of battle. Tzailoth whipped his head around to see a smaller human in an exosuit bracing a cylindrical device against his shoulder. The device was glowing with an eerie blue light and emitting a steadily rising whine. "Time for a science lesson, boys and girls," the human crowed. "Class is in session!" Tzailoth had a split second to marvel at the human's sheer audacity before the device erupted in a blinding flash and a deafening boom. A shimmering wave of force exploded outward, washing over the combatant. It's like a tidal surge. The Soggroth boarders caught in the blast were tossed like ragdolls, their weapons shorting out in showers of sparks. They convulsed and thrashed on the deck, their motor control completely disrupted. But the humans advanced through the chaos unscathed, their armor glowing with a faint blue sheen. The hawk-eyed giant paused to aim his cannon at Tzailoth, his teeth bared in a savage grin. "EMP shielding," he said conversationally. "Gotta love human ingenuity. Now then, I believe you were surrendering." Tzailoth stared at the human in mute horror, his mind reeling. An EMP weapon. Of course. The humans had baited a trap, lured them in, and then unleashed a device that neutralized the Soggroth's greatest advantage, their superior numbers, in one fell swoop. He keyed his comm with a shaking tentacle. "All units, stand down. We are outmatched. Surrender and live." The words tasted like bile, but he forced them out. There could be no victory here, only a futile last stand and inglorious death. The humans had won. As the Soggroth boarders began to lay down their arms, Tzailoth sagged against the bulkhead, his heart heavy with despair. The humans. Norgos, the humans. They were like nothing he had ever encountered. Cunning, ruthless, indomitable. What manner of creatures were they to best the Soggroth so easily? He looked up as the hawk-eyed giant loomed over him, the human's expression unreadable behind his helmet visor. "Why?" Tzailoth croaked. "Why this deception? Why lure us in only to crush us so utterly?" The human cocked his head, considering. Then he reached up and unsealed his helmet, revealing a weathered face with hard, calculating eyes. "Because you needed to learn," the human said flatly. "The galaxy's a big, scary place, and there's always a bigger fish. Consider this a free lesson, courtesy of the human race. Don't fuck with us." Tzailoth shuddered at the human's cold, matter-of-fact tone. There was no anger there, no gloating or triumph, just a simple statement of fact, as immutable as the laws of physics. The human turned to his comrades. "Secure the prisoners and prepare to repel their ship." "And Snyder?" The smaller human with the EMP device snapped to attention. "Yes, Sarge?" "Damn fine work with that gadget. Remind me to buy you a drink when we get back to port." The one called Snyder flashed a grin. "Aw, shucks, Sarge. It was nothing. Just a little something I whipped up in my spare time." As the humans set about their work with brisk efficiency, Tzailoth could only marvel at their casual camaraderie in the face of what had just transpired. They had just routed a Soggroth boarding party, crushed a pirate assault, and yet they acted as if it were just another day at the office. What were these humans made of to face such challenges with such unwavering resolve? What drove them to such heights of courage and ingenuity? As he was herded towards the brig with the rest of his crew, Tzailoth could not shake the feeling that he had just brushed up against something profound and terrifying. Something that would change the face of the galaxy forever. The humans. Norgos helped them all. The humans were coming. Tzailoth sat in the brig, his tentacles bound and his spirit broken. Around him, his crew huddled in shocked silence, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. They had come aboard this ship expecting an easy raid, a quick score of loot and slaves. Instead, they had found only defeat and humiliation at the hands of the humans. The door to the brig hissed open, and Tziloth looked up to see the hawk-eyed giant striding in, flanked by a pair of armed guards. The human regarded the captive Sogroth with a cool, appraising gaze, his face an unreadable mask. "Captain Tziloth Carr," the human said, his voice flat and emotionless. "I am Sergeant Mac Hollister, Chief of Security for the Terra's Hope. You and your crew are now prisoners of the Terran Confederation." Tziloth flinched at the human's words, his heart sinking even further. Prisoners of the Terrans. It was a fate worse than death. He had heard stories of what the humans did to those who crossed them, whispers of unspeakable tortures and mind-shattering interrogations. He shuddered to think of what awaited him and his crew. But as he looked up at the human, he saw something unexpected in the man's eyes. Not cruelty or sadism, but a kind of weary resignation, as if this were all just part of a day's work for him. "What will you do with us?" Tziloth asked, his voice hoarse with fear. Hollister regarded him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, shaking his head. "That's not up to me," he said. "You'll be turned over to the Confederation authorities when we reach port. They'll decide your fate." Tziloth felt a flicker of hope at the human's words. The Confederation. They were known for their fairness, their adherence to the rule of law. Perhaps there was a chance, however slim, that he and his crew might escape the worst of the human's wrath. But then Hollister leaned in close, his eyes hard and cold. "But let me make one thing clear, Captain," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "If it were up to me, I'd space every last one of you. You attacked my ship, threatened my crew. That's not something I take lightly." Tziloth swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. He could see the barely contained anger in the human's eyes, the coiled violence that lurked just beneath the surface. In that moment, he knew with a terrible certainty that this man was capable of anything, that he would stop at nothing to protect his own. I understand," Tziloth stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Hollister nodded, his expression grim. "See that you do," he said, "because if I ever catch you in human space again, I won't be so lenient. You got off easy this time, Sogroth. Don't push your luck." With that, the human turned and strode out of the brig, leaving Tziloth and his crew to their fate. As the door hissed shut behind him, Tziloth slumped back against the wall, his heart hammering in his chest. He had been a fool, he realized. A fool to think that he could challenge the humans and emerge unscathed. He had underestimated them, dismissed them as just another soft target in a galaxy full of easy marks. But now he knew the truth. The humans were not to be trifled with. They were a force to be reckoned with, a power that could shake the very foundations of the galaxy. And as he sat there in the darkness of the brig, Tziloth could not help but wonder what the future held. For himself, for his crew, and for the galaxy as a whole. One thing was certain, though. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. Sergeant Hollister stood on the bridge of the Terra's Hope, watching the battered Sogroth ship limping away on the main view screen. The pirate vessel had been crippled by a few well-placed railgun shots, its boarding pods neutralized and its crew captured. All in all, a successful repulsion of a hostile force. Dr. Snyder stepped up beside him, his exosuit still smudged with the grime of battle. "Looks like they're tucking tail and running, Sarge. I guess they learned their lesson." Hollister snorted. "We can only hope, but I wouldn't count on it. Pirates aren't known for their wisdom or restraint." Snyder shrugged. "Well, at least we gave them something to think about. That EMP pulse should have fried most of their systems. They won't be raiding anyone else for a good long while." Hollister nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "That was a nice piece of work, Doc. Your gadget saved a lot of lives today." Snyder waved a dismissive hand. I'm just the ideas guy. You and the security team did the real heavy lifting. Watching you work, it's like poetry in motion." Hollister raised an eyebrow. "Poetry? I didn't know you were a fan." "What can I say? I'm a man of many talents." Snyder grinned. "But seriously, Sarge, the way you lead, the way the team moves and fights as one, it's damn impressive. It's what makes us humans so dangerous." Hollister considered that for a moment, his eyes distant. "I suppose you're right. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced. But we've got grit, we've got heart, and when we work together, when we pool our strengths, there's nothing in this universe that can stop us." Snyder clapped him on the shoulder. "Damn straight, humanity. Fuck yeah. Hollister chuckled at the ancient Earth meme. Humanity? Fuck yeah, he agreed. As he turned his gaze back to the stars, Hollister felt a swell of pride in his chest. The Sogroth had learned a hard lesson today, that the human spirit was not to be trifled with, that when pushed, when threatened, humanity would always rise to the challenge. It was a lesson that the galaxy would learn one way or another. The hard way, if necessary, for the humans were coming, and the universe would never be the same. As the Terra's Hope cruised through the void, Hollister couldn't help but reflect on the events of the past few hours. The Sogroth raid had been a close thing, a desperate battle that could have easily gone the other way. If not for the skill and courage of his security team, the quick thinking of Dr. Snyder, things might have turned out very differently. But that was the thing about humans, wasn't it? They had a way of rising to the occasion, of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. It was what had allowed them to spread across the stars, to carve out a place for themselves in a galaxy that was often hostile and unforgiving. Hollister had seen it time and again, in the heat of battle, in the cold of deep space. The indomitable human spirit, the refusal to give up or give in no matter the odds. It was what made them such formidable warriors, such tenacious explorers and colonists. And yet, for all their strength and resilience, humans were not invincible. They had their weaknesses, their flaws and foibles. They could be reckless, impulsive, even arrogant at times. It was a delicate balance, walking the line between confidence and hubris. But that was where leaders like Hollister came in. It was his job to keep his people grounded, to remind them of their limitations even as he pushed them to exceed them, to inspire them to greatness while never letting them forget the cost of failure. It was a heavy burden, but one that Hollister bore gladly. For he knew that every life under his command, every soul aboard the Terra's Hope, was a precious thing. A light in the darkness, a spark of hope in a universe that often seemed cold and uncaring. And as long as he had breath in his body, as long as he had a ship to command and a crew to lead, Hollister would fight to keep that light alive, to protect and defend the people under his care, no matter the cost. For that was the true measure of a leader, the true test of a human being. Not the battles won or the enemies defeated, but the lives saved and the hope preserved. And in that moment, standing on the bridge of his ship with the stars stretching out before him, Sergeant Mac Hollister knew that he had passed that test, that he had lived up to the highest ideals of his species, the noblest traditions of his calling. He had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human, and he would continue to do so for as long as he drew breath. For he was a warrior, a protector, a guardian of the light. He was human, and he would never, ever surrender.